Alright, so let's go ahead and continue talking about the chemistry of organic molecules, or food. So when we left off in the last lecture, we were talking about the different food groups: carbohydrates, fats, proteins, nucleic acids. And we're starting with carbs. The key function of the carbohydrates is to supply energy. 1 gram gives us roughly 4 calories of energy. So if you did some quick math and said, well, I need roughly 2,500 calories a day if I was to eat strictly carbohydrates. That's it. Nothing else. What we're looking at is about 622, 23 grams of carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates come in 3 forms. We have our monosaccharides, which are single sugars. These are the simple carbs. These carbohydrates are the type that they will give us a quick burst of energy. It goes into the system very quickly. So the experiment I want you guys to run is, if you have kids, 6, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 2-year-olds, give them a bunch of carbohydrates. Give them 622 grams of chocolate. See what kind of reaction you get. Athletes during exercise, during a race, will often consume little packets called goo or power gels, or these little things that are pure glucose. Glucose is the simplest form of carbohydrate. That is the one that immediately goes into your system. Okay, glucose C6H12O6. That is the molecular formula for glucose here. All right, that goes into the system quickly and gives us energy very, very fast. The problem is it burns out very quickly. So it's a quick rush and then a big crash. So we don't want to consume 625 grams of glucose. You're going to feel like you're on top of the world for about an hour, and then you're going to crash. So you want a little bit to give you that quick burst. But this is not a sustainable type of carbohydrate. Okay, so again, balance it out. The key is balance. It's not eliminate glucose from your diet, it's just balancing it. A small amount of glucose, not a problem. You got, ooh, I'm in a need, I want some chocolate, I want some candy, I got that craving. Do it. But just keep in mind, how many calories are you bringing in? If you're bringing in 1,000 calories of glucose, you need to keep that balance going so we don't have health issues. All right, so that's natural sugar. Now, we do see fake sugars out there. NutraSweet, Sweet and Low, Splenda, Equal. There's a whole spectrum. We got Diet Pepsi, Diet Coke, all the different diet drinks. These are made from an artificial glucose or an artificial monosaccharide. So what it is chemists took sucrose. Sucrose is a natural sugar. Find it in fruits and plant materials. And they changed it. So they popped off these hydroxides, these OHs, and replaced it with chlorine. So the electrons balance out, whether you have an OH or a chlorine. This creates a stable molecule, but it's not a natural molecule. So sucralose, what's marketed and sold as Splenda, is something our body doesn't recognize. Okay, so a key thing here I want you to remember, if your body doesn't recognize it, your body won't use it. If your body doesn't use it, you don't get any calories from it, but you also don't get any energy from it. So drinking a Diet Pepsi, great, no problem. You drink it, but you're not gaining any energy from that Pepsi. You're not gaining any calories from it because your body doesn't know what to do with sucralose. It can't metabolize it, or it metabolizes very minimal amounts, and it basically eliminates it from the system. So a big key thing to remember about food, if you can't use it, you can't break it down, if you cannot store it, your body's going to get rid of it. It's going to eliminate it from the system. Okay, so that is our monosaccharide group. Now, if we take two monosaccharides and push them together, go through condensation, we now have what we call a disaccharide. So disaccharides are simply two monosaccharides. So mono 1, mono 2, condense them, put them together to form a larger structure, we get a disaccharide. Now, we don't do that a whole lot in the animal world. Plants, all the time. But in the animal world, we tend not to do too much of this. Plants can take it, turn it into maltose. We can then eat the maltose. We chop it up, break it down. We go through hydrolysis and break it down back to glucose. Glucose is what enters into the cell. Size matters when we're talking about making energy. So I'm going to put a big red star here. The size of the molecule is the important thing. Glucose is small. It goes into the cell. It fits. Maltose can't fit. Has to be digested. So with disaccharides are simply the combination of two monosaccharides. Two simple sugars. That are combined into a larger form. Okay, so think about fruits, vegetables, etc. All these different things out there that are considered disaccharides. So you eat the disaccharides, you got to break it down into monosaccharides, then it becomes energy. So it takes longer. So you don't get the sugar rush from an apple. You get more of a little longer of a sustained energy output from a disaccharide. Now, the most complex type of carbohydrate is what we call the polysaccharides. Okay, these are large, complex carbohydrates. These are huge, huge carbohydrates. These are long-term energy forms. So if you want energy for the entire day, 8 hours, 10 hours, long-term, etc., you want polysaccharides. These are the things that will fuel your body from breakfast through dinner time. So big, gigantic forms of carbohydrates. So what we have to do is take the starch, chop it up, break it down, break it down, break it down into individual glucose molecules before it can actually enter the cell. This takes hours and hours in order for us to be able to do this. So long-term starches, complex polysaccharides are ideal for that form of energy. Okay, so again, those carbohydrates in the large form, polysaccharides, give us a long, sustained form of energy. So the challenge for most of us, though, is are we bringing in too many calories and not using those calories? So ideally, you need 2,500 calories. If you bring in 3,000, you have an extra 5. That means you store it, you save it, you hang on to it. That's not a healthy thing in the big picture. The animal-based version of a polysaccharide is what we call glycogen. Now, glycogen is our way of storing large amounts of energy in this big, complex polysaccharide. So let me put that down here, animal-based. Okay, so this is an animal-based polysaccharide that we'll find in us, in cows and chickens and pigs and horses and all sorts of animals. It's found in the muscle tissue. So when we eat meat we are getting glycogen. This is a lot of glycogen is found in the liver. It's also found in your bloodstream and your muscle tissue and muscle cells. Primarily the liver is where we store a bunch of glycogen. It's like a backup reserve of energy that your body can tap into at different times if needed. Plant-specific polysaccharides are things we call cellulose. All right, so let me put up here plant-specific. All right, so this is a plant-specific polysaccharide, cellulose. We know it as roughage, fiber, bran flakes, oat bran, things like that. When you eat celery, the stringy fibrous stuff, that's all cellulose. Plants use this for their cell walls to help give strength and rigidity to their cell wall. We cannot digest this. Humans can't. Other animals can. Cows and rabbits and deer and all sorts of animals can break down cellulose and gain energy from it. But humans, we don't have the necessary enzymes or the necessary bacteria in our digestive system to be able to actually break down cellulose and get energy from it. So if you're taking notes, writing it out on paper, that paper is made up of cellulose. If you were to eat that piece of paper, you're not going to get any energy from it. We can't do it. Our body doesn't break it down and we can't use it. Okay, the last type of polysaccharide is this stuff called chitin. Now, chitin is a very interesting and unique polysaccharide. This is found in both plants and animals. Or, I'm sorry, animal and fungi, not the plant world, fungi specific polysaccharide. Alright, so this is what makes up the cell wall in fungus and exoskeletons in certain animals. So, you guys eat mushrooms on your pizza. That has chitin in it. And we can't digest the chitin. We can't break it down. Okay, so again, eating that mushroom on your pizza or mushroom on your salad or however you eat fungus, mushrooms, yeast, etc., the cell wall has chitin in there. It's a structural component that gives it its shape and its structure. But we don't digest it. Again, we don't have that ability to break down and digest the chitin polysaccharide, so we gain no nutritional value from it. Exoskeletons of different animals, insects, you look at the cicada here, the green one coming out, that is the animal, the living animal. This is its exoskeleton, this brown shell here. That is made up of chitin. So their body produces it. It's used for structural support. Again, exoskeleton is an external skeleton versus internal. Crabs and crayfish and lobsters and shrimp, their shells are on the outside of the body, or the exoskeletons are on the outside of the body. Those are all made up of chitin. So chitin is, again, another polysaccharide. We find it in the animal and the fungal world. So carbohydrates, again, the key thing to remember on the carbs. This is what I want you guys to drill in and remember and keep in mind. The primary function is to supply energy in the form of ATP to all living things. So when we eat carbs, we want it for energy. But if we consume too many, then we have a backup that gets stored. So what our body does is we take in excess energy, carbs. It's stored in the form of big complex carbs like glycogen, but then once that glycogen storage tank is filled up, then it stores it as fat. So if you're gaining weight and you don't like it, look at how much energy you're bringing in, how many calories, and what type of calories and we can figure out how to stay healthy.